interested in how that was connected to poverty, race, gender. And now I am kind of interested in everything. I'm really passionate about economic justice, racial justice, climate justice. And I'm really, really happy to be here. And I'll pass it over to Shomo.
Hi, I'm Shomo. I use he, him pronouns. I was raised in Los Alamos, but born in Virginia, and then I'm currently in DC I finished my second to last semester of law school, and I'm thinking about doing my last semester in law school back in New Mexico since everything is online. So we'll see what happens. I can't really point to a singular thing that made me interested in politics. It kind of just gradually happened. I think like the first experience I've ever had in like a political realm ish is when I was in second or third grade. My class did like a mock election for the, how old was I then? For the Bush v. Kerry thing. And I just voted for Kerry because that's what my mom was. And then since then, I just always paid attention to politics. And then when I was 12, I saw that for some reason, the Obama campaign thought it would be a good idea to open up an office in Los Alamos, which made no logistical sense thinking back on it, because it is a small town of 17,000 people. And the fact that they didn't have one in Santa Fe was very confusing. So I just volunteered there in my free time because my mom was like a single parent. So I had plenty of free time alone at my disposal, as many only children do. And then since then, I've just been involved in every single political things. And then I just got really interested in government. And then I developed a schema for critical thinking while in high school, based on multiple philosophers through a humanities course that gave me the ability to hate every single thing in society, because philosophically nothing makes sense and it's all for profit. And yeah, it was a gradual decline. It was a gradual movement to me becoming a nihilistic progressive, I guess, for lack of a better term. And I will popcorn it over to Kat.
Hi, y'all. I'm Kat. I guess in terms of when I got involved in politics, I actually, unlike a lot of y'all, was not really interested in politics when I was a kid. It wasn't until I was in high school, I was a junior in high school, and I was kind of forced by both my mom and one of my favorite teachers to participate in this program called We the People, which was basically a class focused on the Constitution, constitutional theory, history, law, all of that. And it was actually also like a competition. So we competed in like mock congressional hearings. Our team got to go to DC and compete on a national scale. And that was really the first time that I interacted with politics. And I found that I really liked it, and that a lot of the history I learned through that class applied to the present. So that was really a big deal for me and really pushed me towards, I think, both my interest in history and my interest in politics, which are really big things for me still. Yeah, since then, I've done a lot of work with the climate justice movement, specifically the Sunrise Movement, and really just want the world to be a better place. I want to live in a place where we don't have profit and corporations driving all of our policy and all of our ideas about how things should be. So I really think that being involved in politics has allowed me to kind of understand what my values are better, if that makes sense. I'll go ahead and pass it to Songtree.
Thank you, Kat. Hi, everybody. I'm Santry Payochi. I'm Taos Pueblo in Oglala, Lakota. I am currently in Aztec, New Mexico, which is close to the homelands of the Southern Ute, as well as the Navajo Nation. And so you guys made me think back way to the 7th grade. I didn't realize I was into leadership or politics, but now thinking back, I remember running for 7th grade rep and having sandwich boards and everything. And I remember losing to a friend who's a friend of mine now on Facebook. Her name is Shanita Stevenson. I'm all rapping because she rapped her speech. So that's how she won. I remember that. Shanita Stevenson for 7th grade rep. Anyway, yeah, so I always tease her about that when I talk to her. But anyway, and then the second the second thing that happened to me was I was provoked to action because of my children being discriminated against in public schools. And so everybody here probably knows my story because I've said it over and over again, but it's opened, new pathways for me and was the reason why I went back to school and have learned so much. And so, yeah, I'm going to make it short. And then I will popcorn it to my twin sister, who is a community organizer in Los Angeles, April.
I'm driving, so I'm just going to turn my camera off so I can just talk, if that's kosher with everybody.
Totally fine.
Okay. Kioho, Mitakiape, April Cordova, Machiape, Malakota, and Taos Pueblo. Hello, everybody. My name is April Cordova. I'm Taos Pueblo on my father's side, Oglala Lakota on my mother's side, 5th generation from Chief Red Cloud. I'm a mother, community member, entrepreneur. I have been introduced to leadership, now that I'm thinking about it, through a parent advisory committee through the American Southern California Indian Center here in Los Angeles, where we had a board, and I was different positions on that board, from president to secretary to treasurer, doing fundraising and outreach around education for my daughter and for other community members here in Los Angeles. As I stated, I am an entrepreneur, so I do different types of projects virtually here in Los Angeles on my own. I've only been an entrepreneur for 1 year, but in my free time, I do a lot of different types of advocacy. And one of the things that I believe has got me into politics, which, to be honest with you, my sister called me like 10 minutes ago and asked me if I wanted to be on a call. So here I am, because in my family, when you're asked to do something, you always got to step up. One of the things that Songtree did was totally invite me and continually invited me to help her with text banking in New Mexico. And because I always ask her for favor to be a participant in things that I'm doing, the need was there to step up. So this past election year, I helped with text banking, not only for Songtree, but here in California with the California Native Vote Project, and felt really a really sense of accomplishment when, the election turned blue, and the way that it was seen for me that I reached out to somebody, especially here in our community in Los Angeles. People are like, thank you for calling me. I didn't even know, we did like a lot of virtual programming around Native vote and vote in general. So, and with census as well. So that's my story. Thank you for having me. Ta'a Pilamayaye. Gracias. Thank you for having me. I can't see anybody, so I'm just gonna ask somebody to pass it on to the next person. Ta'a.
I think then we'll pass it on to Clarissa.
Can we have one more person on who's on by phone? Could you identify yourself for us, please? I see you as 505.
Hello. Hi. Can you hear me?
can hear you. Who's this, please?
It's Rebecca
Oh,
Peterson.
okay,
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Okay, so I'm kind of driving around Albuquerque running errands for my mom. Sorry, I can't be on camera. I missed the very first introduction to the call. So my name's Rebecca Peterson. My family comes from Norway, Sweden, Scotland, Ireland, and England, and settled in South Dakota. And I grew up in Santa Fe, living in Albuquerque now with my mom. My background is in dream work with Carl Jung, and I'm doing a post-Jungian kind of dream work that the dream as being wild and not interpreted and not analyzed, and letting the psyche be free of our analytic mind. I finished my dissertation in that in January, and I'd like to see what I have to offer. I'd like to learn from you all, and so love your sharings of who you guys are as youth, and totally inspired. And I want to do anything I can do to help this movement. And I had this memory of I was like, oh my God, right. In 6th grade, I ran for student president at Sequia Madre Elementary School and won. And then my project was to have bake sales, and we bought plants and planted them around the playground because I said it's too bare here. And so we planted all these, like, I don't know, kind of bushes or something. And I had kind of forgotten that. So I'll let that be my introduction. I'm here to listen, and I'm glad that I can be here, even though I'm also driving. And thanks for letting me share. And I don't know how to unmute myself. So if somebody, we'll see if you can mute me. There's some direction. Maybe it's *6 again. Anybody knows? I hope y'all could hear that.
We could hear you.
Yeah, thank you for sharing.
Okay, I think we got you muted. And Clarissa, did you want to introduce yourself too?
Sure. Hi. Buenas tardes. Since I like doing the traditional openings. Buenas tardes. Soy Clarissa Duran de Española Nuevo Mexico. Hi, I'm Clarissa Duran from Española, New Mexico. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. My mother is from Southern Colorado, Manassas area. My dad is from the Mora area. I live in the Tewa Basin, which is unceded territory of Tewa peoples. My mother's grandmother was Tewa from Okeowinge. Most of the rest of my family was from the Iberian Peninsula. Also Apache and Norga, which is the Norse people. I got into politics not necessarily because I wanted to, but it was a family thing, generational family thing. I remember being 10 years old and running the lists for my dad. My dad was party secretary for about 15 years. He also served under the famous or infamous Emilio Naranjo. He was his aide at the legislature for about 12 years. When I say running the lists, I mean, we used to type out lists of the Democrats. We used to send them typed letters, and most of our politicking was done at a precinct level. So I started going to the county conventions when I was about 13 and helping my dad in the elections there. And I've just always been part of it. Anytime I've tried to stay away from it, I just end up back into it. So I'm here for good now. And thank you very much, everybody, for being here and being part of this organization that I was proud to start. I've been an advocate, community organizer for about 30 years. And I think that this is such an awesome opportunity for our communities. Thank you.
Yay, thank you, Clarissa. And I think Cheyenne wanted to introduce herself. Songtree, is that right?
Yes. Hi, my name is Cheyenne. I am Oglala Lakota, Taos Pueblo, and Navajo. You guys probably already know this because my mom already introduced herself and where we're from. But my start in politics is probably through my mom. Especially this year during the election, I was a fellow for the New Mexico Democratic Party. And that was the first time I probably did anything directly related to politics. But I was always into like stuff like, you know, gender equality and feminism and stuff like that. So yeah, thank you.
Yay, thank you for being here. Okay, I can pass it off to Damian to get started.
Yes, I believe that's everyone. So let's move forward. And thank you everyone for your stories and just for sharing your own experiences. Let's see. All right, so this is the inclusivity training that Sofia and I developed. It's something we kind of talked about during the end of the election, kind of around the end of October, beginning of November. During our experiences during the election, we just felt like it was kind of really important to develop a training like this, because in the different work capacities that Sofia and I have worked in, whether it's volunteering or working for DPNM or other organizations, we felt like this is an area that was really lacking in terms of every organization. And so that's why we developed this. And, you know, thank you everyone for attending and having us today. Let's see, sorry about that. So first, we would like to start off with a land acknowledgement. One of the first resources we have is this website, native-land.ca. It's a website that will just show you all of the native lands here in the United States and who they belong to. And also to any events that are going on that you can attend or do and participate in to support the Native peoples and their movements and actions. If you're looking for just a quick resource, we also have this phone number that you can text 907-312-5085. All you need to do is text your zip code and it will tell you which Indigenous land you are on. Before we get started, we do have a bit of a precursor. Because this is a little bit of a sensitive training, but also kind of like direct. So the best way to get information from this training is to be open and aware of your own emotions and experiences. That's why I kind of had everyone share at the beginning, you know, what it was that first got you into either politics or activism, because that kind of feeling and awareness will help you throughout the training to kind of understand what we're talking about and also kind of empathize with what we're trying to teach people and talk about today. We do want to be sensitive, but also direct. Some of these things will kind of be very in your face and blunt, but we felt like by talking the way we will during this presentation, it will kind of help people understand what it is we're trying to get across. But if anyone at any time does, you know, feel offended, you know, please feel free to speak up at any time. Once again, allow yourself to be vulnerable and reflect. By doing this, it's the only way you can really learn and allow yourself to get out of your own way and just really take in as much as you can. The other thing is we want this to be a safe space. So if you ever have any questions on inclusivity, please don't be afraid to ask, or also if you have your own personal experiences, don't be afraid to share those as well. And the overall purpose is to bridge the gap. I know in the past few years, I mean, I have definitely seen the nation become polarized and divided, not just between, you know, say Republicans or Democrats, but just people in general. And so our goal with this training is to make it so where we don't have this polarization or division anymore. Just to kind of help folks out, some of the key terms we'll be talking about is inclusivity, tokenization, microaggressions, and gaslighting, just so that you can kind of already start thinking about those terms. And if you're familiar with some of them, well, then you can kind of focus more of your attention on the others, just because this is a little bit of an extensive presentation. But with that being said, let's get started, and I'll pass it over to Sofia.
Awesome. Thank you, Damian. So we are going to start off with essentially what it means to be inclusive. I'm not really going to read off exactly what it says here, but feel free to read through it, skim it, take a picture and read it later, whatever you want. Basically, inclusivity is a practice or action by which we try to create a space where everyone feels included and welcomed. The reason why it's a practice or action is because it's constantly evolving. There are new things that everyone, including myself, learns every day that would allow us to change our behavior and thus create a more inclusive space. For example, I just thought of something that we should add to the presentation in the future. And so again, it's a practice or action that you're always undergoing to create a more inclusive space where people feel welcome, where people don't feel judged, and where people feel as if they can kind of confide in folks within that space and feel like they will be taken, like their concerns will be taken seriously. Next slide, please. Awesome. And why is inclusivity important? I touched on this a little bit, but I think the last slide is kind of, or the last bullet point is, I think captures the essence the best. If we're not actively working towards creating an inclusive space, team members can feel left out, underappreciated, less likely to want to work collaboratively. If we're not, a lot of inclusivity is taking criticism and working with it and adapting. And if you don't do that, oftentimes you lose people in the process. All right, so these are, we're gonna be talking about pronouns and preferred names. So one pretty easy way to create an inclusive space is by introducing yourself with your preferred name and your pronouns. So for example, I go by Sofia. That is the name that was given to me, but if I had a nickname or a name that I gave to myself that I preferred to use, then I would expect that the rest of you would use that name as well. Along the same lines, the pronouns that I use are she, her, hers, and they, them, theirs pronouns. You can use either one with me. Damian uses he, him, his pronouns. Folks, there are a lot of different pronouns. We just listed 3 examples up here, but there are a lot of different pronouns that you can use, and essentially pronouns are the way that someone refers to you in the third person. So if I'm talking about Damian, I would say like it's his water bottle, or he was feeling this way. So it's the way that you talk about someone in the third person. And if you don't use the pronouns that they would like you to use, this is considered invalidation. And that is really, really harmful and really hurtful. So you want to avoid that at all costs. On Zoom, we included a little trick here. One thing that we really encourage is to put your pronouns next to your name. So if you don't have your pronouns, you can add them by clicking the 3 dots at the top of your individual box right next to the mute button on your computer, and you can add them next to your name. You can also change your name there. So if you'd like to change your name to your preferred name, you can do that as well. And then also just a quick fix is using gender inclusive language. So instead of saying like, hello, ladies and gentlemen, you can say hello, everyone, or hello, folks, just wanting to make sure that we are not, we're not making anyone feel excluded. Awesome. And then intent versus impact. So this is kind of another, it's a longer learning process, but it's really, really helpful. So when you make a comment, let's say it comes off as offensive, the reaction shouldn't be, oh, that wasn't racist, oh, that wasn't sexist, it was just a joke. It should be, oh, okay, I'm so sorry, I didn't realize that, I created harm in that way, let me try to fix it. And the best way to prevent harm being inflicted on someone else from a comment, a question, a joke, whatever, is to think about the impact that will have instead of the intent. So what matters is the impact that has on an individual, not the intent of the individual who said it. So I just want to make sure that we're cognizant that, even if you think it's a joke, other people might not think it's a joke, and it might really hurt some individuals in the room. Awesome. And then using I statements, this is another kind of quick fix. So instead of using sort of general statements that categorize another individual or a group of people in a certain way, or instead of speaking for another group of people or an individual, we really want to make sure that we're using I statements. So we're speaking from the I perspective is another way to say it. This basically means that you should really only be talking about your own personal experiences. A lot of times it's tricky if, for example, you have a relative you're close to whose experiences you know very well. Oftentimes you'll want to speak to their experiences, but it's important to hold your own truths. You don't always know how someone else perceived a situation. So by saying things like, they felt this way, you did this, oftentimes you are sort of alienating the other person and sort of generalizing their behavior. This is also super important in the context of groups. So this is, instead of saying as a Latina or as a Hispanic, this is what we all believe, that's not really true. You want to make sure that you're sticking to the I perspective because no one group is a monolith. Awesome. And then I'll pass it over to Damian for this one.
Yeah, so this is kind of when we're going to get a little bit more extensive. One of the first things that we talked about is tokenization and what it is. And the best way we felt like tokenization, like the best way to describe it is when people are often felt like they come from minority background and then they're just symbolized as that, and people kind of view or talk about them as only their background or that one word that makes them them. So for example, oftentimes I've been referred to as either the young person in the room or the only person of color in the room. And that's what essentially tokenization is when those one or two words are what people kind of prioritize over myself and like my entire life experiences and my values. And so one quick example is, someone saying, yay, we have a young person here, thank you for being here. And those people are thinking, that's inclusivity or just diversity in general. And so here are a couple more examples. We are being inclusive because we have a young person of color here. And the thing I often try to teach people is, tokenization isn't always nice when you're only seen for being how people see you as. And so what I kind of like to twist it around on people is to, imagine if you were tokenized, if someone went up to you and said, it's so nice to see an older person, or it's so nice to just see, a white person here, those things really kind of hit people with, what it kind of feels like and what the experience is to be tokenized. And so the ways to prevent tokenization is to just essentially treat people like people. That's realistically what I think the majority, if not all of us, want. I see that we do have a rather diverse group here today. And so I think that's something we can all empathize with is we just want to be treated like a person, not just by the way we look. And the ways that we have found to prevent tokenization is kind of goes along with treating people like people is just building relationships with them and not necessarily making that individual a spokesperson for the group or background that they come from, but building a relationship and just treating them the way they want to be treated. And kind of going back to the I statement thing is catering to their own personal values and beliefs. Another way to prevent tokenization is understanding that people have a voice. People definitely come from different backgrounds and experiences. And so allow them to use their voice and share what they have gone through. Otherwise, then you're just kind of putting people back into that symbolistic position where they only want to be seen but not heard. And so now we are kind of about at the halfway point in the presentation. So we would kind of like to open up for open discussion to allow people to share, in what ways have you either seen or experienced tokenization? What was the experience like? And how do you think we can probably just move forward and change the environments where we have seen tokenization either occur or become accepted? So if anyone has anything to share, just please feel free to unmute yourself.
I just got told to unmute. Okay. Sorry, I think I raised my hand, but my Zoom's being weird. I've actually used, and I know this isn't the point of this training, but there have been instances in my life where tokenization has played in my benefit. For instance, jobs who hire on the basis of trying to get more diversity. I actually got my first legal clerk job because this is 100% true. There was already an Indian working at the firm, and the person who hired me wanted to be able to tell other people that at his firm there were a pair of Indian cousins, which is problematic on multiple features, but I did get the job. But it's still not like a healthy thing to perpetuate. Yeah, I'm not sure if that like helps anything, but
I think it does. I mean, because the way I kind of see it is, it's like a coin. There's two sides to it. And so I know when I definitely attend activist-based groups or like meetings, I definitely see where it does come to my advantage to be one of the few only young people there. The only time like I have definitely seen a problem with it is like when you can't speak to it or you're not allowed to, share those experiences from where you come from.
Another common experience that I think a lot of people have, that I've experienced, there we go, using I statements. So something that I've experienced like in classrooms, for example, when you're the only, like, let's say you're the only woman in the room or you're the only POC in the room, oftentimes if you're talking about something that's related to those subjects, everyone else will look to you to answer those questions when, I mean, you're not really any more obliged or any more qualified to answer those questions, especially if there's something that you are all supposed to be learning at the same time. So that's an example of where I think it's really, really harmful and kind of unfair. And it really puts the burden on the person whose identity is being discussed.
Just kind of piggybacking off of that, Sophia, I think it can also create an attitude of like, oh, this person's only here, or like, they're the smart woman in the room, like they're the only, basically it creates an attitude of like, you're actually not good enough to be here, but we need a woman in the room, or we need X kind of person in the room, and you're the best of them, so I guess you can be here. Like, kind of, it just reinforces those stereotypes that people in minority groups are not as good or not as valid as everybody else, which doesn't always happen, but definitely does sometimes.
On that note, I do want to piggyback because you brought up a really good point, and it's the root of the issue I have regarding my conflicting feelings about affirmative action programs for colleges. Just because some of them are quota-based, some of them are not, but the entire thing of affirmative action is to kind of even the playing field, which is cool, but it ends up having the practical effect of tokenizing minorities in these universities. And that's why I'm so conflicted about affirmative action programs, because yes, the best person should get it, but just because they needed to create diversity doesn't mean I'm any less qualified than like another person. And back the other way, which is why like I see these affirmative action lawsuits, and some of them have merit, like some of the ones in Harvard do have merit. And then like there's the opposite effect where the UC system won't even hire Asians because won't even accept Asians because they've tipped the scales so differently. And it's starting to have a reverse effect, and it still gives the impact that that minorities are second-class citizens. But the converse of it is if you get rid of affirmative action, you still have all these old white people, old white men making these decisions, and their implicit biases are going to leak through whether we want to or not. And it's just this tricky situation that I constantly think about, that sends me into a philosophical spiral about which side is right, and I can't figure out the balance.
Yeah, when I got into Columbia, I was a really good student in high school and I was really involved in everything, but some of the white male peers of mine who didn't get into Columbia said that I had gone in because I was Mexican. So that's also an example of tokenization and kind of and affirmative action and the stigma against POC in spaces where they're not usually where that weren't built for them, at least. Any other like examples or thoughts?
I don't think so, unless anyone would like to jump in real quick. But if not, then I think it'd be safe to say, you know, we can move on, and I'll pass it on to Sofia.
Awesome. Yeah, and also if folks have like ideas that you think of later on, or just stuff that you want to put in the chat, feel free to do that too. Okay, so we're going to talk about microaggressions. So microaggressions, I think the definition is really good, so I'll just read it out. So it's the everyday slights, indignities, put downs, and insults that people of color, women, LGBTQ populations, or those who are marginalized experiences in their day-to-day interactions with people. And so we'll go into some examples, but microaggressions occur daily by friends, even family, coworkers, political candidates. That's one of our examples. So Damian, you can actually go ahead and go to the example slide. So political candidates, Biden used the phrase poor kids and white kids during his campaign. He was talking about inequities in education, and he used the phrase poor kids and white kids. Those are not mutually exclusive. And a lot of folks were really insulted by that because he essentially equated POC with poor kids, and the underlying assumption was also that they were not as intelligent. Another microaggression would be failing to address people by their preferred pronouns. So like if someone used he, him to refer to me, I would be like, those are not my pronouns. That's a microaggression. That's especially relevant. I think that happens most often for people who use they, them pronouns or other pronouns that don't necessarily adhere to the gender binary. So if you know folks who do use those pronouns, please be cognizant and try to use the correct pronouns for them. Another example is when you're addressing young voters, using phrases like you're too young to understand, you don't have enough experience. Those are also kind of microaggressions. They assume a level of intelligence or a level of understanding that is based on age, which is problematic. Some examples that Damian included that I think are really good. Now is not the time for that discussion. Just wait till you've been around longer. That's really dismissive. You're too new to run for that position. Wait your turn. Also, again, assuming things that may or may not be true. One thing that happened a couple weeks ago to a couple folks here was that one of our bosses used the phrase powwow for a business meeting, and a couple other coworkers used that as well. And And Songtree, if you don't mind me saying this, you bravely came out and basically said that's not the correct term for a business meeting. That's actually incredibly offensive to use it that way. Powwow is not a business meeting. It's a very, very important Native American cultural ceremony. And that is an example of a microaggression. Another good one is using hardworking Americans versus immigrants. This essentially implies that immigrants are not hardworking, nor are they American. And so again, these microaggressions happen every day. They happen unintentionally. I probably use microaggressions at least once a day. You guys probably do too. It's okay. You just have to be cognizant of it. And if you hear yourself thinking something or saying something that might be a microaggression, just think twice and do some research and see if you could say it better. Awesome. You can go to the next slide. Okay, and then gaslighting. So gaslighting is another thing that a lot of people do every day. The phrasing that we used, or some of the phrases that we used earlier, like you're too young to understand, that also could be a form of gaslighting. So essentially gaslighting is an act of manipulation. The manipulator employs seeds of doubt into the target. So for example, if Damian remembered an event one way and I told him, no, it didn't happen that way, it happened my way. And eventually Damian might come to think that it actually did happen my way, even though it might have happened his way. So this can be super, super harmful because it promotes cognitive dissonance. Essentially, this means that someone might act against their own values, against their own ideas, beliefs, or even against their own memories, thinking that the person who's gaslighting them is correct. It promotes low self-esteem. It also, it turns people to no longer practicing or acting upon their values. They've been invalidated. So this can also, again, like we'll use the young person example, you're too young to understand. That person might internalize that and think, oh, am I too young to understand? When in reality, they might not be. And we have a couple examples on the next slide as well. So Damian, you can go ahead and do that. So other examples of gaslighting, these are really great examples. So this is really relevant. A person of color has a negative or violent interaction with law enforcement. They seek help from their peers for solutions on how to fix the policing system. And instead of trying to provide help and trying to come up with solutions together, those peers say something like, I never had a problem with a police, so you must have handled the situation incorrectly, or every encounter I've had with police officers was positive and was peaceful, and so you were just behaving inappropriately or you were being aggressive. That's an example of gaslighting. That person wasn't actually there. They don't actually know, and they're just making assumptions and making the person who actually experienced the event doubt their memory and their understanding of it. Another example, a low-income student calls for public colleges and universities to become free within their political party. The feedback is, oh, you'll ruin the economy. You can't be asking for that now. There are other priorities. These are examples of gaslighting because, again, it's invalidating that person's experiences and that person's understanding. This is also kind of a microaggression because, again, you're assuming that you know more than the person you're speaking with, even though that is part of their lived experience. A classic example is the "you were asking for it." When a woman is sexually assaulted, let's say she seeks help from family, friends, even a therapist, and instead they ask her, what were you wearing? Were you flirting with the person? You were asking for it. That's an example of gaslighting. Awesome. And then ways to prevent gaslighting and microaggressions. We've touched on this a little bit, but listening, hearing people out before just dismissing their concerns. And if they do bring up concerns, really try to engage with those concerns, do research, talk to each other about it, really figure out, what merit their concern does have, because it probably does have some merit, and really work with them on that. I think another important thing is to realize that we've probably all been gaslit before, and we've also probably also gaslit another person. It's a very common behavior, and it's not okay to do, but it's okay to understand that you might have done it, that it might have been done to you, and to build from that. again, with the whole remembering your own personal struggles, speaking to your experience, try to stay true to yourself and ask yourself questions like, is this how I would want to be spoken to? If I came to someone with this problem, is this how I would want them to react? And am I wanting to help my own self-interest, or am I really doing this for the other person? Awesome. And then Damian, I'll pass it off to you.
Yes, thank you, Sophia. So this is just a recap because we're pretty much near the end of the presentation. And so the main thing we want to get across is, to make sure that we don't want to tell you that you're doing it wrong, that you're not being inclusive in the correct way. I think Sophia has said it in a great way where, some of us probably without noticing it have probably gaslighted someone or had a microaggression. We've expressed one probably once a day. And it's something that, we don't always recognize, but, it's something to be aware of and cognizant of that, we just want to try to be better and to always try to improve where we can. And so the other purpose is to make sure, everyone who's attended today, we just want to help you improve upon being inclusive and to be better inclusive to those who are different from you and possibly have different values from you as well. And this is something we just kind of keep frequently bringing up, but we felt like is just very important, is don't end the conversation, but start it. It's very important just to kind of establish that you don't want to have those barriers and you don't want to put them up for other people when they come to you with differences or issues or different values from you. But that if you truly want to be inclusive, break that wall and hear the other people out. And to really be inclusive, that's just the best way, is to have the conversation and keep it going. And so now we're just into the open discussion portion. This is kind of overall from the presentation. So what are some of the most critical topics you learned about? Do you have any self-reflections or experiences you would want to share? And if anything, is there anything you want to share with other people or that, you personally just took away from this? Let's see.
I don't know if you can see, but I'm raising my hand. This is Haverhill.
Yes, I just asked you to unmute. Go ahead.
Awesome. Your presentation and your information is very much informative. I applaud you all for stepping up to provide this information, some which is common to me and I understand, but others which I feel more comfortable with knowing and understanding what it is that you presented. It is very common out here to use he, she, they, them, and I just, as a individual who interacts with many, I did take into consideration how important that is. So thank you for that, and I will definitely try to use. No, I won't try. I will use those phrases more often. Although I hope to share that my sister Song Tree shared with me a story that she had with a colleague from Yeti. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Yeti, but I would love for her to share that the change that she's with Yeti. But thank you all for your presentation. I really appreciate it. And while I'm driving around listening to you all and the strong leaders that you are. Ta'a, the end.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I know. Yeah, there's things that I feel like I learn every day and want to do better the next day. So I really, really appreciate that. Anyone else have any takeaways?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, good. I had to call in. And I also agree with a better understanding of these terms. Unfortunately, I was going in and out from my service, but I wanted to talk about, if I could, tokenization, just offer some comments on that. I agreed with Shomo in how it has worked in my favor too, But I think there's like a misconception people have about Indigenous people being classified as a minority when we're actually sovereign people. Like we come from sovereign nations, so that is a difference, you know. And then also about gaslighting, it makes me think of like in New Mexico, how people are complaining about us being 50th in the nation, 50th in education, you know, and then they're like, oh, but we won't fund, you know, education with the money that they need. So that's kind of what I was thinking about when we were on that topic. But I think this is great training. Thank you both so much for the time that you put into it. Appreciate it.
Songchi, you have to tell them your Yeti story.
Yeah, tell us if you're comfortable.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sure. So I used to work for a hospital before I worked for DPNM, the Democratic Party of New Mexico. And one of my coworkers is like Instagram famous. She's an ambassador for Yeti Cycles, which is a high-end mountain bike company. Like one of their bikes costs like $5,000. Anyway, they use a brand hashtag called what is Yeti Tribal Gatherings. And so she had asked me, she knows that I was going to school at UNM for Native American Studies, and she asked me what my thoughts were on the fact that they used tribal gathering in their hashtags and in their branding, because they have them all over the world. And I told her, well, when I think of tribal gatherings, I think of tribal people, and tribal people are sovereign nations with their own cultures, their own languages. Some have their own land bases. And so if you're using it to brand your product, people are going to think of your product, and then you're contributing to erasure of, you know, people's identities and their customs and languages and everything. And she was just like blown away by that understanding. And you just really don't know who you're talking to sometimes. And I didn't realize how much of a voice she had. You know, she talked to the owner of the company, and he used that information and put out like a public release. And, you know, this is kind of being trendy, I guess, for lack of a better word, that they are no longer using that word, those words to brand or market their company anymore. So I thought that was huge, and that is happening with like the Washington team and like the Cleveland Indians also most recently. And so it's just an amazing time that we're living in, and to know, you know, what knowledge is power and how strong your voice can be to be a champion of change.
Yeah, definitely. Songtree, that's such a good story. That's awesome. Yeah, no, and I really do feel like, I mean, it touches on the idea that if someone brings something to you and says, you know, this is not okay for this reason, or this makes me feel not okay for this reason, it's really important to take that seriously and either change your behavior, or in this case, change an entire company's behavior and marketing strategy, which is pretty amazing.
I would like to ask, you know, Kat, Rebecca, Clarissa, do you guys have anything, you know, you would like to share as well with the group?
Hi, it's Rebecca. I just thank you so much for this information. These are things that I've been hearing about, you know, since it's not unfamiliar to me. But the detailed, more like definition and examples have been really helpful. And what I realize is what I'm going to do is put that more in the forefront of my social communication that I do, like put she, her, hers on my name, you know, on my Zoom calls, on my Facebook, and just start bringing that. And maybe my friends will say, why do you do that? Why did you do that? And so maybe it's an opportunity for me to kind of spread that education out a little bit to some of my peers who are mostly, you know, educated white women, but all different kinds of people too. So I'm just, thank you for the information, and it's kind of just bumped it up a notch for me into a more heightened awareness. So that'll do it for me. And I love that Yeti story. That's pretty awesome about how speaking up can really make a difference. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome. I put my pronouns in, like, yeah, my Facebook bio, Twitter bio, they're everywhere. And I know that especially for folks who use like they, them pronouns, Z, Zim, Zers pronouns, like any pronouns that are a little bit less common, I think it really, like, they really, really appreciate it also.
I was just gonna say I liked this presentation because I think that, like y'all said from the beginning, you approached it in a very direct way, but not in a way that made anybody feel shame, if that makes sense. Like, I think one thing that can make it really hard to acknowledge, if, for example, I said something and it was a microaggression and I was really embarrassed about it and I felt bad about it, but instead of owning up to it and saying, I'm sorry, you know, it's easy to get defensive and to be like, oh no, I didn't say that. I didn't mean it that way. It was a joke. So I think the way that you presented the information just makes it, like, it just creates an environment within this group that I hope people will carry out of this group, to that, you know, encourages this, like, being present and like understanding what you're doing and thinking about what you're doing, but not feeling like you have to be defensive or feeling ashamed, just saying like, okay, I'm learning, I'm trying harder, I'm sorry. Yeah, I don't know, I just thought you presented it in a really good way for that.
Thank you, Kat. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'd like to double on that, what Kat said. I agree completely. It made it be like, oh, right, it'll help me more with my self-examination and not introduce like being wrong or shame about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's super important to acknowledge that we all say things that might be offensive. We all do things that, you know, might not be the most considerate. And I think it's okay to just like understand that and try to work to be better, because there's no one who's immune to that. Clarissa, go ahead.
I really appreciated what you just said, Kat. You know, I'm 52. I think in my experience, people my age and older really battle each other rather than owning up to any guilt or shame we might feel over any of our microaggressions or gaslighting. And those are very just common dominant ways that I've learned to behave in my life. So decolonizing myself has meant really getting back in touch with my heart all the time. And when I feel hurt, angry, defensive, knowing that there's pain there, and I might not be able to do it in the moment, but after I come away from whatever experience it is, I take time with myself and I figure out why that hurt or made me angry or whatever, and then I'm able to respond to people. And I think it's, the other thing is like there are almost always more chances, and you know, if you didn't take the chance in the beginning to apologize or whatever, it's okay for you to take a break and come back to yourself, and then, you know, make the effort to reach out to that person and apologize and discuss it more, because sometimes we are in such a vulnerable place that we can't do it right away. And just watching your presentation, like a lot of stuff came up for me that I just wrote down. I always give myself a parking lot so that I can remember what it was important for me. But just thinking about, how I was raised to be a very dominant person because my family was very political. Knowing that my sister and I, who are my parents' only children, were going to have to compete against men, and being, Hispanic women, we just learned to be super tough, and being vulnerable is a real challenge for us, even within our own family. We have a lot of battles with each other. So we have all promised that this holiday season, we're not going to do that with each other, and we're going to take breaks. But, if you've had these learned behaviors, especially for us older people, it takes us a while. And I appreciate this group always has patience with me. So thank you so much for bringing this training. And I'm really looking forward to, hearing from you all how it goes with other groups, because I know that you're going to continue to present. And I think a lot of people my age, they're not as in touch with themselves as I am. I mean, I'm a social worker. I provide therapeutic outlets for people and believe in therapy for myself. I think a lot of people out there have a really hard time with self-reflection and taking responsibility for their own behavior and even their thoughts. So thank you so much for providing such a clear format, such an easy format, and making it a really safe, non-judgmental space.
Great. Thank you for that, Clarissa. Just to kind of like piggyback off of what you said, I would like to thank everyone as well, just for everything you shared and allowing yourself to be vulnerable. I think at this point, like I'm probably the only guy in the Zoom call. And so like with what Clarissa just shared with her being, Hispanic women, it's definitely kind of like opened up my eyes to where, the challenges that she faces. And so like by all of us just sharing, our own personal experiences, I think it helps all of us just kind of pick up maybe hopefully a thing here or there, just to kind of think about and recognize as we move forward. So we are about at the near end of the presentation. I think that's it for the open discussion, because I think everyone just shared, unless anyone has anything else. But moving on, we have the what's next portion. What can we do moving forward? So Sophia and I just kind of wrote these things down, just kind of where are the best places to implement this training, and where do we see it being needed the most? I know we have either activist organizations or political groups that we work with, or at least political interests. And so one of the first places we thought that, people can start at is getting involved in party politics. Join your local Democratic Party or a local caucus you may have. I know here in New Mexico, we have the Federation of Democratic Women, the Young Democrats, the Labor Caucus, the Hispanic Caucus, Native American Caucus, the list goes on. Other progressive organizations, a big one here in New Mexico is Indivisible. Other ones are Retake Our Democracy and Yucca Sunrise Movement, other groups like them as well. These are other groups where I have definitely personally seen where inclusivity hasn't really been practiced or prominent. And so these are just great places to kind of mend the two together, politics and inclusivity, and also activist-based work. Another thing is, run for party positions, whether it's actually becoming an official officer in your county central committee, which is a subsection of your local county Democratic Party, or joining the Democratic Party at the state level, which would be the state central committee, or running for their SPARK committee, which is their platform committee. These positions are all important because these positions are the ones that determine and vote on, I guess, platform ideas or activist-based work. And so by getting in these positions, this is where you have the ability and the authority and the autonomy to make these groups and environments more inclusive for people And another one is also DPNM. I think a lot of us have experience with them. And I think if anything, if you think about your negative experiences, some of them may come from DPNM. Another thing would be get hired, whether it's working for, say, here locally in San Juan County, San Juan Citizens Alliance, it's a very progressive group, or also to just working for the Working Families Party or even DPNM. These are also groups where you can kind of build awareness and try to help make inclusive environments for people, but also in your organization work, the people you speak to as well as an organizer, just kind of making them feel included as well, and possibly hopefully getting them active as well. Another thing, run for office. I mean, that's the way I've seen also too, is just getting your message out, the things we're talking about in our experiences. That's how we can share our message, and really just be an activist to our own personal experiences, but at the same time also learning about other people's experiences as well, and being an activist for, I guess, other people versus ourselves as well. This is kind of a question for everyone that we can kind of have like a little mini discussion on. But what are some organizations or spaces that you felt either inclusive in or included in? And which environments have you not felt included? If anyone would like to share. But also too, you know, in what ways do you think we can make these organizations that we'll be talking about inclusive?
I'd like to share.
Yep, feel free.
Okay, thank you. This is Songtree. So in my most recent employment with the Democratic Party of New Mexico, we went through a really tough time. You know, it's a high pressure, time sensitive position and very, very important objectives. And, but, you know, we were able to bring our issues to the table and get them resolved. But I remember like every single person reached out to me and supported me. But I remember specifically Shelby saying, you know, because there was this meeting that I didn't want to go to. I actually was going to quit. I did quit. And the next day she told me, you have to go because they listen to you. And I've never heard, like, nobody's told me that before. I mean, I've heard like my hero, Deb Holland, say stuff like that. Like, I have a voice that nobody's heard before. And so when Shelby said that to me, I was like, wow, you know, like that really empowered me. So that was a really a good moment that I recall from working with the party.
Thank you for that, Songtree. I appreciate that. And I think that's important too, is to kind of find like clarity and find gratification as well in moments where you can, where you have felt like, you know, you do have a voice, so that you can feel like, you know, the organization you are working with or attending, you know, they have an inclusive environment where you feel included.
Like to say something, I guess. So I mentioned I've actually done a lot of work with Sunrise. Most of my work with Sunrise was actually in New Orleans when I lived there. And I felt like the New Orleans hub was very, very inclusive. It was something that, I mean, I had heard of it and I had gone to a couple meetings like during college, but it really wasn't until like after I graduated and I really didn't know what I was doing. And it was like this weird limbo period that I was finally able to kind of focus on it. And it was one of the things that I think brought me a lot of purpose after graduating from college. So I definitely think that Sunrise is a group, and of course every hub is different, but I think they're a group that really aims to be inclusive. And especially I was very impressed over the summer when they really shifted focus and supported the Black Lives Matter movement like full-heartedly. Like, you know, I think that having a climate justice group that says like, and they're not the only ones. I mean, I think Yucca does a good job of this too, but just saying that, you know, there is no climate justice without racial justice, that these issues are connected, that that really allows them to be more inclusive because they're not just set on saying, we only care about the environment. They care about people. And I don't know. I've had a good experience with Sunrise. Like I said, I know every hub in every part of the country is different though. So yeah.
Hi, it's Rebecca here again. I had an experience this summer with I'm not highly involved, but it's an online, well, it's an international dream group. I think it's called International Association for Dreams, something. And I've been kind of peripherally involved. But a friend of mine who's Black tagged me and said, could you come in on this chat in this huge group? It's huge, it's international, and there's people from, it's like thousands and thousands of people. And there was a small group of people in that organization that were trying to uplift Black Lives Matter. And they were calling for people to share dreams that were related to Black Lives Matter or that was going on in the world. Because they had just had a big, long thing about dreams about COVID. She was having dreams about the pandemic. So they had all these threads. And it was shocking the amount of racism that came out in that group. It was like, holy shit. Pardon my French, but it was like unbelievable that the several people who really were like, this is all just politics and doesn't have any place here. It was pretty stunning. But the owners of that organization really stepped up to the plate, and they shut down the thread because they said it was too controversial. And then some people who I know who are activists in both dream work and eco-psychology, which is another organization that can be very racist or very white supremacist. Anyway, the owners of this International Association for Dreams rewrote their whole platform statement on Facebook and really rose up in support of Black Lives Matter. And so I participated in quite a few of those threads too, with people I know in person, and the rest was, online. So it was a really eye-opening experience to see who, like, you'd think, oh, something like dream work, oh, there's all these woo-woo people, but wow, it was problematic. So it gave me a lot of thought for, how, as I move forward with my work with dreams into the world, how to really let those kind of statements be at the forefront. So that was just a little experience I had this summer. Thanks.
I want to just add to what Rebecca said, which is I've actually probably had my worst experiences with racism, microaggressions in progressive circles. It's interesting because when you're with middle of the road or conservative people, they don't make any bones about how they feel about people of color or whatever it is. It's kind of more expected there. But for me, when I joined progressive politics, I kind of went against what my family was about, which are more conservative Democrats. It was shocking to me how racist so many people were and how few people personally knew people of color or had ever, really worked with people who were like me, who weren't afraid, who were leaders, who were, who could dominate a room if they wanted to. And in progressive politics, I really, especially in the early 2000s, experienced a lot of people that it just shocked the heck out of me how there was all this underlying racism. So I'm excited about what's happening these days. I think that a lot of people are getting the gist that wherever racism is, people are going to call that out now. It's just not going to be tolerated anymore. So interesting where you find it.
Yeah, and I kind of agree, or I do, with Clarissa and Rebecca, and I think that's where getting involved is important. Is whatever groups you're involved in, like when you see inequities or racism or even sexism going on, it's important to call it out and to speak up. I know one of my own personal conflicts with DPNM and its platform committee is that still right now we don't have any language concerning police reform or decriminalizing abortion here in New Mexico. Those are things that are still not being talked about within our own party that, you know, are very important. And that's where sometimes, you know, other places seem more inclusive versus, you know, the group that should be. So thank you both for those experiences. I think, you know, those are very great examples of kind of just inequities that we can see where we feel like we should be included or others should be included as well. So another thing for kind of like what's next and kind of moving on is give this training yourself. Sofia and I, and also along with the organization, just kind of following its platform, is we don't really want to take credit. We feel like giving this presentation helps you with everything else, whether it's getting involved or running for party positions or whatever. It's how people get to know you, but also it's twofold, is this is a very important topic. And so also just spreading awareness is very important about inclusivity.
Yeah, and if anyone wants to give this training, or like if anyone has an organization in mind that they'd like to, I guess, like spread awareness about all of this too. I know April had something in the chat. And I mean, yeah, I know Damian and I would both be happy to give the training, but I think also it's super, super important that everyone else is also able to give the training in cases where we're not there. But also it's just really like good information to know offhand. So we would be more than happy to kind of help train you guys on how to give the training. Or if there are like any, like if, like, let's say you want to give a training next weekend and you want to just practice giving it to us first. I know I'm more than happy to do that. I'm sure Damian's more than happy to be a resource as well. So if you do have organizations in mind, I would love to chat with you guys and just talk about like how you can give this training, because I think it's really, really important that it comes from someone in the organization as well. And yeah, Clarissa, I think that's a great idea as well for Yoruba County.
Do you think you guys would be willing to give the training with me? Because I think it is good to have that bridge, since neither of you are from the county, but I think the youth voice, like your voices, the way that you present things would be less confrontational, received as less confrontational for people in the party.
Yeah, I mean, I'm up for like Damian and I split up the slides like between the two of us, and so I think, yeah, if someone wants to tag team it, that, yeah, I mean, Clarissa, I'm more than happy to do it with you, especially considering I was working with a lot of the people in the party a couple months ago. But yeah, if anyone else wants to pair up or whatever, we are more than happy to help coordinate that.
Yep, definitely.
Awesome.
Sofia, did you want to possibly talk about the last bullet point?
Yeah, yeah. So if everyone is good on everything else, then the next thing this is something that Damian and I talk a lot about, and this is kind of one of the reasons that we decided to create this training, is we were thinking about in what ways are policies that are enacted affected by, or in what ways should they be affected by inclusivity. So for example, one thing that we both cited was that Medicare for All has a 70% acceptance rate or support rate among Americans, and yet in Congress it doesn't even have a majority. And so again, it's like looking at how to I guess how to use feedback, in this case from your constituents, to help build your policy and actually help enact the change that people want to see enacted. Same thing with like the stimulus checks. Like if politicians, in my opinion at least, if politicians actually listened to how much people on the ground, like how much stimulus and how much extra money we actually need, we wouldn't be receiving $600 checks. It would probably be more like $2,000 a month since March, which is what Canada's getting. But yeah, this is just something that to kind of spark some thinking or some conversation if you guys have any thoughts about it. Oh, cool. And I see Songtree would like to know whether we will receive certificates for participating in the training. Yeah, I mean, Damian and I aren't certified necessarily to give a training, but yeah.
Yes, we currently don't have like anything set up for that to give out, I guess, certifications for attending this training. But I don't know if that's something that possibly our group can look into.
Yeah. Yeah, or even like certificates to become like a trainer could be really cool.
I can check that out. That can be one of my things that I do.
Awesome. So if no one else has anything to say, then thank you all so much. But if you do, please feel free to just chime in.
I have a quick question. This is April.
Yeah, of course.
So I work with a lot of youth, but as you are youth, or as you have experience in leadership, what is the best way to continually engage youth participants during COVID? Because I know that Zoom fatigue is real, and COVID fatigue is real. So what would just be your recommendation as a last step or engagement? I know it can take up a lot of time. I know that it can take, it could be another hour training, but just real quick, how would you recommend me continually to engage youth that I'm involved with?
From my own personal experience, it's just kind of make it personal to the individual versus like the group. Because I know every person is different. And so some people, it might be easiest just to communicate through email. I know I'm terrible with it, but setting up a Zoom call is best for me. That's when, I'm best available to communicate with people. And so that would be just my quick 2 cents to your situation. I don't know if Sophia, you have anything else?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is something that like every organization is struggling with right now. But I think also something that draws me to meetings is like if I have like actionable items, or like things that like, if I'm going to be sitting on a Zoom call for an hour, I really want it to be like worth my time because Zoom fatigue is really real. So yeah, that's definitely something for me is like, I like to feel, I like to feel energized and accomplished after a Zoom meeting.
That's awesome. Thank you. I really appreciate that, actionable items and reaching out. I know that it takes a lot of youth and they appreciate that. Not even with asking them to be involved with anything, just to see how they are too. So
yeah, definitely. And thank you for the question.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I don't want to break in on you two. I know you want to finish up here, but I also want to ask people if you could spend like another, I think we started it off, but like another 15 minutes maybe just as a check-in on some of the action items we're working on as a group. Would people be willing to stay for that? Okay. Thank you.
If no one has anything else to say or have any more questions, I think that's it. So I think with that being said, thank you everyone for attending and listening to Sofia and I give our presentation.
Yeah, thank you. And reach out if you want to give the training yourself too.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.